Hello, welcome back. This is Clayton Vance. Over at Timeless Homes, we're going to do a little exploration today about garages. I want to tell you a story. I was a little bit ago, I was traveling through an old historic neighborhood downtown, and my wife was just enamored with how cute everything was, right? And I'm sure you've driven through old historic neighborhoods and you just think the same thing. It's like, oh my gosh, what a beautiful neighborhood. It's so charming, and every other word we use to describe what, beautiful neighborhoods look like. And I asked her a question. I said, there's something missing in every single one of these houses. Tell me what it is. And couldn't figure it out, because you can't really figure out what's not there until someone points out to you what's not there. And the thing that every single one of them was lacking was a giant garage on the front of it. All it was just a house. And this is a really important thing when you talk or begin to think about the evolution of subdivisions, neighborhoods, houses, house design, and everything else, because it begins to help you understand how neighborhoods got to where they are, why we have the traffic issues that we do, and especially neighborhoods that are not neighborhoods, but cities that continue to grow as fast as they do with more standard suburban neighborhood development patterns. And I think it'll just be illuminating for everyone, just so we know where it came from and where we're going. Because historically, when people would lay out a town, you've got streets and you have lots, and these lots could be in different sizes. Typically, back east, you'd have, and honestly in the Midwest too, you'd have narrow, deep lots. In the West, what would happen is sometimes you'd make the block a little smaller and just chop it into fours and then continue to subdivide as need be. And so they were almost equal on either side. But what would happen is you just have a small little house and a small little house and a small little house. This is before the invention of the automobile. And so what did everyone have if they didn't have an automobile? They had a horse, and they may have had a carriage. And so, what was the first automobile called? A horseless carriage, right? And so it's not like garages never didn't exist. When you go back to the old urban environments back in Europe, oftentimes you'd have these palazzos, or these, I guess in Paris they call them hotels, and you'd have an urban face, and you'd have these giant courtyards. Just go Google Earth these old cities, and you'll see that you have an urban street face, which is all building, and then you'll have an opening, a giant opening, oftentimes, that would be 10 feet wide up to 12, 14 feet tall. Typically they don't go much wider than that, because most of these buildings were constructed with load-bearing masonry, and you have to do arches or really big old lintels, and so the width of your opening would generally be limited to 10 to 15 feet. But you'd have a tunnel that goes through into these courtyards, and there somewhere in this courtyard would be where you park the carriages and the horses there on the ground floor. And then you'd go upstairs to the piano nobile, the noble floor, and that's where living would begin to take place, is these upper floors. Whereas today we want main floor living, barrier-free entries, meaning we want the garage and the main floor to more or less be on the same level. And how do we get from that original thing where we had more or less garage doors in these things, but they were beautiful, obviously well constructed and all wood, and they just fit right into the facades just immaculately. They were part of the design, not an afterthought. And how do we get to where we are now? So, everyone, because horses stink, right? They would put their their carriage house all the way in the back. And if there were alleyways, you go and you park your horse and your carriage and have your horses and whatever back there. And so that's why detached garages, began that way culturally. Is that's where we put the the undesirable stuff anyway, is your porta potty. I guess it wasn't a porta potty. It was, what do they call them? The privy, your outhouse, that type of stuff. You want to get all that crap as far away from the house as you possibly can, because there wasn't indoor plumbing. It was way in the back. And so you put your carriage house, your bathroom, and whatever else all the way in the back of the property, because you wanted to get it away from the house. That was how they culturally wanted to do it. And as things changed, what happened is this thing got closer and closer, and people realized, oh wow, cars I guess don't stink as bad as horses do. So let's put that carriage house a little closer to the house, and then eventually that became attached. And then about 100 years ago, or less, probably about more like 80 years ago, that started getting attached. I'm gonna hide this and draw something new. So you have original house, carriage house, and then you'd put the carriage house with the original house, and so that would be just enough to have just a single car, and it's small, and that's all you needed. I lived in multiple houses in the Midwest and back east that had that exact thing, and the house was always the priority. And culture has just shifted, and that's okay, because we're in charge of design, right? And if we're in charge of design, we can modify whatever we need to in order to accommodate how much storage, personal storage space we need, along with still having a beautiful house. So then we made 2-car garages, and that would encroach into the house. And this is how most of United States is actually built, is this way, where you have less house, more garage, and then we just kept expanding and expanding and expanding. But now we're at a point where we keep expanding the garage, but we get bigger houses, right? And so we fully recognize now, every single one of my clients recognizes that they do not want the garage to face the front, and they don't want the garage to be the dominant feature of the house. Yet, everyone needs a 3 to 4 car garage, because what are you fitting in there? You're fitting in a Suburban, a truck, a car, or a SUV, and a boat. Not all at the same time, but to one degree or another. And so what happens is everyone wants to put the garage sideways. It's like, all right, so then that means you either have to have corner lots or more lots, since we don't have alleys, and you have to go in the side, or you have to have lots that are wide enough that you can drive up and comfortably get into a side garage, which is then going to be a minimum of 24 to 27 feet deep, and it's going to be as long as the day is, with bay after bay after bay. And so how do you break these things up, right? And how do you make the house actually more prominent in this thing? And these are the design challenges that we face today. And I get it. We just built a detached garage at my house, and it's nice to have that extra space. And I'm not going to complain about people who want awesome garages. It's just that there's creative ways that we can deal with garages, and we need to deal with them creatively, and also make them nice, because you can make a nice garage. It doesn't have to be some utilitarian afterthought. And it would make everything a little more beautiful. Of course, it's more expensive, but if you have the money and you can do it, man, just bite the bullet and do it. But that's a little history on why old neighborhoods, old historic neighborhoods, have that charm and that cuteness that these new neighborhoods don't, is because of the situation of who is in kind of the priority, who the neighborhood's designed for. Today, the neighborhood it's designed for cars. Historically, it was designed for people, and houses were designed for people. Today, houses are mostly designed as vehicular storage units with some people on the side. And we'll talk about next time how to make, what are some strategies you can do to make garages a little bit more attractive? Because there's strategies, and we can figure it out together. So until next time, it's Clayton Vance saying to you later.